Welcome to the Modern Nomad Podcast. If you question your current reality and want to escape the 9-to-5 grind, then this is the show for you. And now your host, me. What is up, and welcome to the Modern Nomad Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Kennedy, and today's show we have someone very special that I got to meet at the Gutted Festival. He was a contestant on this reality show, and he was on the van team. He was one of the team captains. He is an incredible human being who has an incredible life story. So Travis Wild is today's guest. So let's go ahead and jump in today's conversation. All right, everybody, we are here with Travis, a very cool dude that I got to meet at Gutted Festival. Oh God, it was 2 months ago. Can you believe that?
Yeah, no, that seems longer, honestly.
It does. Well, you've been putting in a lot of work. You've been doing some insane things with the builds, which I am very jealous of. They look freaking incredible. So just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself for those of the people out here that don't really know who you are yet.
Yeah, my name is Travis Wild. I've been doing van life for like 6-7 years at this point. And it's kind of, I don't know, for me, van life's always been like a secondary aspect to like what I'm wanting to do. But I don't know where to start with introing myself. Pretty eclectic guy, lots of different things going on. Mostly, I guess people probably know me for those, like the van builds, my dog, and writing, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah. What's your dog's name?
Ayla.
Yep. She's in there hanging out.
Right there.
Always right by your side.
Yep.
Yeah, something pretty interesting when you and I were hanging out at Gutted, you showed us that she can pretty much climb a tree. Like it looked like she was about 20 feet in the air, just like jump straight up. That was wild. I loved it. But yeah, you also talked about
her way down.
Yeah, you also talked about something that you like doing, which is being an author. So you've written some works, or what have you done?
Yeah, I think author is reserved for like published writers, but I write, and I've got some books that I would love to get published, and really just working up the confidence to make that happen. Because it's a pretty brutal process in submitting and everything, but writing is really something that I started doing when I was in my early 20s. I really kind of can't say I hated school. My grades were always like great and everything, but I didn't really enjoy English, especially. I thought reading was a waste of time. And then it wasn't until like after college and like high school and college was done and reading wasn't a forced thing that I really got into it as a way to like see different stories and understand different parts of the world. And then when I worked at a group home, kind of just started writing about my experiences there to kind of, show other people a glimpse into those kids' lives and those realities, because it was totally different than like most anything my friends knew and people back home. And so I just started sharing there, and then really writing more on like empathy in ways that we can understand people that are different than us. It's kind of where it started, and it's just the love of it has grown from there.
So what would you say? It's like nonfiction? What type of writing is it?
Well, the first one was like I said, I just started writing about like experiences, and I was a psych major, worked at a group home. A lot of our kids were from youth services or human services and youth corrections. I'm not sure what they call it now. I think it's youth services, not youth corrections. Same thing, but sounds better now. But a lot of those kids, especially foster care kids who had grown up in that system, end up being homeless. I think like there's some stat is like 50% of people who are homeless were in the foster care system at one point. And I was really curious about that. I was curious about mental health in America, specifically like severe mental health issues, and the reality of being a person affected by that in the US. And just seeing like knowing like I'd have kids I was working with that would end up on the streets. So I really wanted to try to just like experience more and try to understand it and not just read about it. So I went for a summer in Denver and just lived homeless and slept on the streets and sat in food lines and just tried to immerse myself in that culture a little bit to understand. Sorry, that was Ayla. She makes noises every once in a
Yeah,
while.
that's all right.
But try to understand their lives a little bit better by living alongside it, and create some empathy and awareness, and just educate myself a little bit as best I could, because you can't truly uh, experience that situation unless it's forced upon you. And mine was like a fabricated experience, but
Mhm.
it's kind of that approach to it, I guess, was a little bit more of like journalistic storytelling, where you're going to a situation and trying to understand it. And from there, I've worked with a lot of younger kids after that, because that was a population I'd never worked with. Was like I worked at a shelter, their summer camp with 3 to 5 year olds. Worked with a lot of kids who'd gone through a lot of different things in foster care, and different adversities in their upbringing, and saw that there wasn't like a lot of great resources for them. Anyway, you're fine. Uh, so yeah, with the kids' books, it's basically just a way to create stories for kids that need to hear. Kind of like they could use to be a main character, but also a hero, but in like a really subtle way. So they're not being pointed out. Because a lot of times those kids, like growing up in that environment, they know that they're kind of like the center of attention in a weird way, where like a lot of focus is being put on like fixing them. Um, and all the stories and all the things I saw for these kids were kind of just like, would not make them defensive, but make them kind of be like, man, like I'm really messed up. Rather than present to them characters that they can like be like, yeah, that's me. I really relate to that in ways that help them express how they're feeling, what they're going through. So that's the point of the kids' books, is to create like an outlet for them, and also an outlet for parents of children who are doing fine, understand like other kids' lives. Because a lot of times it can just be easy to spot that kid in school, or
Mhm.
uh on the on your kid's team or something, and just be like, man, like what's wrong with them? Or you only see the outcome of what they're struggling with. Maybe that's an anger issue, or some antisocial behavior or something like that. So creating some empathy among parents and kids and their peers from a really young age, I think that's the goal with that. Whether it be like writing a book about like uh I don't use like human characters a lot.
Mhm.
I focus on like making it be something that those kids are gonna relate to. So the first one was just like about like a little willow seed that gets blown off a tree and then away from the forest. Um, and then blown up onto a mountain in a storm, and like lands in a little crack and starts growing
Mhm.
up, where it was kind of inspired by living in Tahoe and seeing like this one tree up on this crag of a rock, and this girl I'd worked with who had told me like she just didn't feel like a human, didn't feel like a girl, didn't feel like she was like anybody, because she was in a different place than anybody. This was a girl who'd been uh neglected by her parents, lost one of her parents in a really traumatic way, and then had run away from a bad situation in foster care, um, and then had been kidnapped and trafficked in Denver for like
Wow.
8 months. And then she got out and she was 15. So how you like talk to someone who's been through that, and how you make them feel like, yeah, you are a human, you are a girl. That's what that book was about. And basically the book is called The Place a Tree Should Be, and it's basically about growing where you are. And like a tree, what makes a tree isn't that it's in a forest and it's like all the other ones. What makes it a tree is that it's got roots and branches, and kind of that was an attempt to bridge that gap between like uh a kid who's going to feel like they just don't fit in, and aren't a kid, and aren't a human, and don't deserve love and care because they're in such a different place than everybody else.
Yeah,
So
no, I love that metaphor.
doing things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that metaphor, honestly, you could put that towards not just children. That could be teenagers, it could be adults, anybody and everybody. Because
Yeah.
you I mean, anyone that's living the van life currently, it's like they don't really want to plant their seed anywhere currently. Like you're in Oregon, correct? So
Yeah.
your seed have been planted in in Oregon. Mine's always going to be in Tulsa. This is where I've like kind of known to grow up, and you just grow differently than everybody else, but
Yeah.
you got to know when to spread your roots, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's been the feedback among like teachers and social workers. Those are kind of my two test groups that I've given it to, is that they like it for kids in the age I wrote it for, but a lot of the social workers specifically are using it in their teens and young adults to kind of, because a lot of us don't develop uh, that way of being able to like communicate how we're feeling or what we're going through. And so it's been interesting seeing like the especially like teens and how it's been used for them. And from there it's like I want to write more fun, uh less heavy things as well. And you know, I've done a book about like it's called The House That Was Never Home, and it's about this kid who's got this house in this town, and the whole town's like constantly disappearing and reappearing, and his home is the same way. Like he'll go and the steps won't be there, the door won't be there, the roof won't be there, the kitchen. And that's about like having an unstable home. So that's and then like how to build one from there. And basically he leaves this town and goes and is in search for his home. So I think we all are relating to those
Yes.
things. But yeah, those are it tends to be like heavy subjects because the background for them is heavy. But with writing, that's what I love, is like kind of just like with life, is creating a story that you like better than the one that you've seen, and enabling you to do that for yourself, and also to be the outlet for other people who can kind of see like, yeah, there is another story for me. Because you know, a lot of us don't, we'll all go through a phase where we want to change the trajectory of ours. We see chapter 5 coming and we're like, no, I want to
Yeah.
rewrite that one because that's not the one I want, you know,
Yeah.
but that's where this story is going right now. So
Yeah.
I think that's the beautiful thing about writing.
Yeah. Do you have any of your works online where people could actually read it yet?
No, I've been
Really?
head down. Yeah, writing is such a personal thing to me. And I think it is with anybody who's writing, where it's like, it's hard to put it out there and do it in a way um, that like feels right, and I have no clue how to do that, because I am, another thing about me is I will get projects done, get my idea done, and then move on to the next one without getting it seen as much as possible.
Yeah.
For me, that's where the fun is. The fun, like the publishing process, does not sound fun. Like
No, not at all.
the attention seeking that it takes to get your work out there does not seem fun.
Yeah.
Even with my vans, I'll just like build it and take a couple photos and like be like, there you go. Like that's one way to get rigs done quickly, is you don't do content creation while doing the rigs.
Yeah.
Just
No,
build
I've
everything.
learned that the hard way. Yeah. It took me
Yeah.
way too long to build my van because I was trying to make videos every day. So I would do like one project that should have taken an hour, took like 4 hours, and then I had to make the
Yep.
video. That's an hour. Like it's just not.
Yeah.
But publishing, honestly, like you should definitely look into maybe just one ebook on Amazon and see if you can get that out there.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you've got a decent following right now. You could probably get it
Mhm.
out there pretty easily.
Yeah, there's it's interesting because I've talked with a few publishers and like gone to some agents, and the feedback just from like the queries has been like, this is going to get published, this is good enough, like it's unique enough, it's true. The kids books, like it's funny because at first everyone's like, oh, here's a young here's a young writer, that, and they get approached by so many, and it's like an industry that's like you're really jaded in. And it's not Instagram or TikTok or anything where you can just put it out there and like see what happens. Like, yes, there are self-publishing options there, but and there's plenty of success to be had in self-publishing, but there's another aspect of it being an industry that like you want to grow in, and you want the right connections and the people who can who know what they're doing, because I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm also looking to try to make writing like a career, a long thing, a thing I can do till I die. So I'm not looking to like sell 10,000 books this year. I'm
Yeah.
looking to write stories for my whole life. So I'm taking it from that approach a little bit and trying to not just like rush into the easiest thing. But what's interesting is agents, they'll like look at you, and one of the first things they'll look at is like, oh, you do have a social media following. You do know how to build a following. You do know how to talk to an audience. Um, and that's often simultaneous with like looking at your story and being like, is this good or not? Because they're doing it because they have skin in the game. They have kids to feed. They have a family and a life to build. And so if they're looking at a great story that they don't believe will sell, as much as it could be like the right thing or like a great cool thing to do, they don't want to take on someone that they can't deliver for, and they also don't want to take on someone that's gonna make them go broke or get fired or
True.
something. So
Yeah, very true.
that's where I think for me right now, what I'm trying to focus on is doing it in like a long-term type of way, because I really do believe the stories are good, and they deserve a platform where they can really excel and be shown, and not all rely on me marketing it.
Mm-hmm.
I want my book on shelves at Barnes and Nobles, not just
Yeah.
like on my online store or something
Yeah.
like that.
No,
Or,
I totally feel that. Yeah.
so
No,
that's
it's a
that's
good
where I'm at
long-term
with those.
strategy. That's good. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move into something that you've been doing for the past month. So you've built out 2 rigs in a very short timeline. So you did a van that was kind of partially built out already, and then you just finished up an ambulance, correct?
It was a fire truck, like a
Fire
hot shot
truck.
fire
Oh,
truck.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, one of those huge ones. It's like it was meant to carry like a crew of like 12 people and
Oh,
like
geez.
1,000 gallons of water up fire service roads. Is a beast of a rig. And then the other one was Ford Transit in Salt Lake that I'd been consulting on for like the last 8 months. And very, very early on, like I talked to them, and they both have full-time careers. One's a realtor, the other's an engineer who travels a lot for work. They love climbing, skiing, getting outside, and they're talking to me about the build, and they wanted to do it themselves. But I was like, I really don't think time-wise, like you're gonna have the time to do it. Um, Given your life and your schedule and everything, and it's hard. I think that's a lot of times people
It
don't
is.
get,
Yeah.
like, it's really hard to do, but they're like, no, we really think we want to do it. And after and they were like super transparent too, like we're not making the progress that we really thought, or like they had a lot of questions, and we were working through it. But basically after 8 months they had put the subfloor in, put the kill mat up. uh I went and installed or cut the holes to get the bump outs and windows and vent fan installed like 6 months ago or something. um but then they were like, yep, you're right, you should come build it. You should come finish this because it's
Yeah.
never gonna get done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I actually did, since gutted, installed some flares in Colorado, fixed a van up to sell in Colorado, then did another one in Salt Lake, and then did the fire truck. So have kind of been feet on the ground
So
nonstop
is
since.
that like your business? Like you have a shop that you're currently trying to get out of. You build vans, consult. What do you do?
Um, yeah, I'm shutting down my shop just because the overhead isn't that bad because I'm in like a super rural place. But I'm not here a lot of times because I'm working from the road. So yeah, I would say consulting wise, like I kind of stopped taking on clients just because it was so I was so busy, and it's kind of like so one off, like it's an hour here, 2 hours here. And
Mhm.
unless you're like going the full like counseling route where you're doing 4 to 8 consultations a day, it just got to be so like kind of distracting to be doing that. And so I kind of shut that down a little bit just so I could build, really put my head down and build and get things done. And so yeah, van building, and taking a step back a little bit from the shop. I know I have clients lined up a bit, but I'm also, before all of the van building stuff, I did a lot of photography in the outdoor industry, in the wedding industry and stuff. And now that I'm putting less effort into that, jobs are just like falling into my lap, and people are coming to me more.
Mhm.
And it's nice to
For
like
van
have,
building or for the photography?
but for everything, it's been
Okay.
like really nice. Like I felt like it was a really hard go for like 4 years, 4 or 5 years, where it was just like failure after failure and like barely getting by and working really hard. And now it's nice, like the hard work's kind of paying off, and I'm able to take more jobs that I want and be a little bit more selective and have more inquiries and work with, the right clients. There's still like so many times where an inquiry happens and I'm like, yeah, I don't think we're the right fit. Or like expectations with budget or timeline. And, I try to help people find someone that'll help, you know, them get to their goals and reach it. Because there's sometimes it's like, yeah, I don't do like heated floors and induction stoves and like $15,000 electric systems, but
Mhm.
I have friends who do that. And other people where it's like, I think the hardest one is the reality check, where it's like based on their budget and their means. Like a DIY build where they're doing themselves is their only outlet, the only path forward, or saving up and taking time, because a lot of people, I think, want to do it and they want to do it right now. And I think it's also good for people in that situation to be able to tap the brakes a little bit, so they don't rush right into something and get themselves financially and lifestyle in a
Mhm.
situation where they're like overwhelmed.
Oh yeah.
I've seen that happen quite a bit. So it's a little bit when I get inquiries, like making sure it's the right fit for me, making sure that they're gonna be okay, and like doing some like counseling there and like, yeah, tell me more why about your trying to do this, and what are your
Yeah.
goals and what are your expectations. And because yeah, I've been doing it for a long time, and the hopes and dreams and expectations has changed so much all over the spectrum with van life, of like what people are expecting to get out of it and what they expect it takes to get into it.
Yeah, so you've been doing it for 6 years, and I've only been doing it for a year. So the first time I saw it was about 6 years ago when I saw a video on, I think, YouTube or Instagram. Someone was living in a van, thought it was incredible, so I started going down the route in the rabbit hole trying to figure out what van life was all about.
Yeah.
Found out that you can do it with overlanding. So I built out an old Forerunner and turned it in, or not an old one, it was a new one. I built out a
Yeah.
Forerunner to kind of travel and live in that and get the taste for it. And then I was like, all right, I'm going for the van life. So from 6 years ago, what do you think like has changed in the van life community? Because there's a lot, like you've got the basic builds where people just throw a mattress in the back of a van or a SUV, and now you've got like 200, $300,000 builds.
Yeah. It's mainstream now, and back then it wasn't. That is probably the biggest thing. Is like, before you'd tell people like, yeah, I'm gonna live in a van, and people were like concerned for you. Um, like, are
I feel
you
like that's
okay?
still
Do you
there.
need help? But like now Mercedes is taking van life ads out during the Super Bowl.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
so it's kind of seen as like, wow, you're reaching a goal that a lot of
Mhm.
people have. Like, how cool, like you're doing that. And um so it's a little different in that aspect of like, people know what van life is a little bit more. It's almost like a word the general population gets. um I would say now too, like back then it was up to, like, when people would ask about that, like, you controlled the narrative a little bit more. You were able to be like, this is why I'm doing it, this is why I got into it. And nowadays people are like, oh, doing it for the gram or doing it for this. And so there's this like assumption, there's more assumptions now about like what you're trying to do or what it's for. Like, oh, you want to be an influencer, and it's like, no, there's a lot of people that just uh some people, yeah, they do want to be an influencer. I wouldn't really, or a content creator, that, whatever, I'm not sure if those are the
Mhm.
same thing or not. uh
Little bit different, but same thing, yeah. It's
yeah,
it's it's
yeah.
like a weird thing, like, I
I
would
don't
consider
know who, I
myself
don't
more of
know
the
which of my
content
friends
creator
are
side.
content creators or influencers. I guess it
Yeah,
depends on if you get paid for making your content, or if,
yeah.
I don't know, chicken or the egg type of thing with that. um but yeah, I think like that's a great career path for some people, because I have friends who are really successful at it, and like it's the ad dollars are just shifting from like being like cable and TV to like people. um and you get like a, in some ways, like a better review on things, I guess.
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah, I don't think there's any shame in that. Also, like, if you're a trust funder, like that sounds freaking awesome. I'm not one, but
Yeah,
like
no
good for
joke. Have
you.
you
Like,
actually ran
oh,
into anybody that is?
yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, there's like I have friends who are, and it's like, yeah, your
Mhm.
life's like awesome. Like, I don't know. Everyone complains about like trust funders, but it's like you're telling me that like you wouldn't like mind a little bit more security and peace, and a lot of them too like have they do have jobs. Like you can be a trust funder who does work hard, who does things, and I don't know. It's not like worth my time to be critical on how someone else is happy.
Mhm.
So that's my big take on that is like if they are like happy and doing it, and I'm not like mad at them.
Yeah.
Uh, like if anything, it's like, well, they're not taking up a job that I can go get so I can work and like
Yeah.
reach my goals. So yeah, it's all over the place.
When you started the community, how do you feel like it's changed? Just like obviously like you're mentioning people are now doing it for reasons as to like become popular on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, but from like 6 years ago, what do you think like most people were doing van life for? Because it wasn't something that you just like automatically started posting, "Hey, I'm living in a van online." And people just like were like, "Okay, that's awesome." Like what do you
Yeah.
think has changed since then?
I think there a lot of people now the goal is van life. And a lot of like from what it was 6 years ago, the goal was something else, and van life was the means to it. And now I think that it's a little bit closer where a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to live in a van, I want to have, and it's that's not saying like that's a bad thing, because a lot of people the goal of van life was like is like the financial freedom or to travel. But it's become a little bit more synonymous, like a little bit more the same. Like I do want to live in a van, and van life's the goal. Um, Versus back then, it was like you're just around people who were like doing their jobs or working in like more unconventional ways. So I think now van life is the conventional way to do something, whereas before it was the unconventional way. So it didn't matter what rig you were in or like how nice it was or anything, because that wasn't the
Mhm.
point. The point was
Yeah.
like everything around the van. Um,
Mhm.
and now I
Like
guess it
what it
feels like
got
a
you in
lot more.
life.
The point is everything in the van.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think that's all. Like my worst fear is that I'd become one of those cranky old guys who are like, "Oh, you're just doing it for like to be famous on Instagram, or you're doing it's like those were people that have always existed." So I always want to be encouraging, especially to younger people who are like coming along and
Mhm.
trying to find their way, because you're gonna be influenced by what you see going on. And I'm kind of thankful that I didn't see all this going on, because I probably would have been
Mhm.
a lot more intimidated about getting into it.
Yeah.
Um,
So what actually got you into van life? Like what was your defining moment where you're like, all right, I'm buying a van and I'm gonna start building it?
um, kind of the backstory to that was I was working in a nonprofit in Tahoe, being a caretaker at a lodge, and being a host for groups that came to use it. Um, while I was up there, I got cancer, nonprofit world,
Mm, yeah.
where you don't have health insurance. I thankfully I was paying for my own health insurance. It was basically my whole salary, but I was just like I'd had a bunch of cancer scares younger and health issues, and I was snowboarding pretty intensely. So I was like, if I break my leg, I'm like screwed. That was my thought
Yeah.
process. So I
Wise.
bought insurance like the year before and was talking to my brother about it. I remember being like, yeah, like it sucks. Like I'm spending a lot of my money on it, but I was like, if I like break my leg or get cancer or something, like that would be terrible if I don't have health insurance. So the next year I get cancer. And that was really like a catalyst to change. Like I needed to change my life. I needed to make more money. I needed to get better benefits. I needed to do all those things in order to not like fail really hard. um so I went and got a job that allowed me to figure out like all my health stuff up in Tahoe, and then I moved down to San Diego, and still like with a college degree, like wasn't like I was, and going to the hospital all the time and dealing with insurance and bills and all of that stuff. That was kind of what I considered my day job, um, because it took up all my time. So I couldn't really get like a great job at night. It was back when the job market was pretty rough. So I got a job in foster care, but it was just like way too emotional and intense, and I was not doing kids the service they deserved. And it paid like $12 an hour, and was
Mm-hmm.
like I was it was such a weird time where I was just like I didn't know where to turn or what to do. And as far as what I could afford, I was living in like a pretty rough situation downtown San Diego, in like a one room apartment that had no bathroom or kitchen. Like that was all communal. It wasn't like quite a halfway house, but it was like the only thing I could afford. Um, and it was just a kind of a hard time. And the only money I was getting was like I bussed tables and then drove for Lyft to like 3 a.m. Um, and it was extremely humbling. I had a good like career path, I guess, in the nonprofit world. I had like a college degree, like I'd always done well, and then all of a sudden I'm in this situation where it's like
Mm-hmm.
not well, health wise and everything. So I kind of bounced around, like saved up, got, you know, just wasn't spending any money. I
Mm-hmm.
was eating like I remember I would eat like peanut butter and bananas wrapped in tortillas because it was like the highest calorie per dollar. Um,
That's
and
awesome.
just not going out. Like it was kind of a hard time, but I just kept working. Um, an opportunity came from a kid that I had worked with, like mentored a little bit when he was in college. He worked events. They needed some help at a Super Bowl, and so they brought me on. I immediately was like, peace out, bussing tables. Like this pays more in a week than I would make in a month. So I
Mm-hmm.
did that. That company liked me. They ended up hiring me on to travel more for them, doing events. And I ended up going around the world, and that was like a huge break. Traveling around the world, working for Fortune 50 companies, totally different than what I was used to, but it didn't pay a ton, but it was like more than I'd ever seen working, you don't the jobs I had, I was making like 10, 15, 17, $22,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
working with kids. Like you just don't make a lot of money doing that stuff. So for me, that was like, wow, I'm doing it. Um, and so I started like staying in some better places. And then I was traveling so much for that job. And this is really where van life comes in. Um, I was never home, and I was like paying for an apartment that I wasn't in. And then my buddy was like, well, we have a spare room, just like pay for when you're here. And that was a really cool setup because I was there like 4 or 5 days a month. Um, and then I also found, like, even when I was back, I was pursuing photography and traveling and going and getting out, because I still was like trying to find peace and trying to find like the things that remind you life is worth living,
Mm-hmm.
because still wasn't easy. I was still going through health stuff during that time. um and then my buddy ended up buying a boat, and I lived on the top deck of that.
Oh yeah.
And that was like a cool adventure. But I was like, this isn't a sustainable long-term thing. So uh, I wanted to travel more, had like been doing the travel directing job for a couple of years, and wanted to like branch off and start my own company, writing and doing some graphic design and photography and whatnot. And so I was gonna live in a teardrop trailer. And a family I'd lived with in Tahoe, I was visiting them. She's like a city planner, and her husband's a lawyer. And I was like nervous to tell them my plan. They're kind of like parental figures to me, a little bit like sibling parental kind of
Mm-hmm. Oh
people
yeah.
to me. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna live in a teardrop trailer. And the wife Jamie was like, Travis, you don't want to do it. And I was like, oh, here's the talk on like, being smarter and stable and having roots and whatnot. And she's like, if you want to, like, she's like, you don't want to live in a tear up trailer. She's like, you're gonna want to like stealth camp sometimes. You should get like a car and build something there. I was like, oh, that's a good point. People can always tell if you're in a teardrop, or like it's less
Yep.
convenient. So I googled best car to build tiny home in, and that's how I found out about the T1 Sprinters. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of a long path to get to uh the van, but it made sense financially. A big part of it was like when I had to go to the hospital, I would have a place to stay there. Because a lot of times, like testing would be on like a Monday, Tuesday. And I hated driving back and forth. I hated to like just having to hang out in the hospital for a long time. So I was able to create like and have this space where I could just go back into.
Yeah.
Also stop paying rent so I could pay off my medical bills faster. All that sort of stuff got me into the van. And then it got really popular and the world like got really into it. And it kind of like washed over me like a tidal wave. Like I was not ready for that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So when you got your T1 in, did you have any like previous build knowledge, or have you built anything of that like big of a project?
No, not at all.
No.
I had gosh, I think the only thing I'd like ever done for that shelter wise was like building a lean-to in the backcountry, like doing some, like backcountry winter camping.
Yeah.
But I don't know, in like middle and high school, I was always building bike jumps and stuff like forts and things like that. And I honestly think like more than having building experience, it's important to like I don't know what's important or the most important thing, but like being like I'd always been really good at math and spatial stuff and just having a good understanding there. And then I think too with everything I had done, like the uh working in the group homes and um doing the homeless thing and taking on cancer alone and navigating all those things, like building something in a van was like did not seem, I wasn't very phased by it. I was just like, yeah, I'll build something in there that I can like sleep in.
How long did the first one take?
I like couldn't afford much, so not long till I was sleeping in it.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think like I built the bed platform in there and like overbuilt it, so I tore that out and like put a new like frame in there because I realized like it was way stronger than it needed to be,
Yeah.
heavier and stuff, and took up too much space. So, um, but yeah, I went without a fridge for 3 years. I went without like I didn't have a built-in stove, I don't think, in that one till the very end. Didn't have a toilet in it for like a year or two. Didn't have a sink for over a year. Didn't have a place to sit inside for like 9 months after going full time in it. So it was very incremental and slow. As far as like till it was done. And then I think when it was like quote unquote done, I just like I sold it like 4 years into it.
Yeah. So you pretty much got in there as like a financial means, like saving some money, but also being able to travel to do somewhat of the work that you were trying to do at the moment.
Yeah, I think for me back then it was what was most important to me was to like create a light at the end of the tunnel. Because I really wasn't seeing one. It was kind of like grim and uh depressing. So I was like, you know what, this is gonna, if I do this right, it's gonna create a financial path, um, and also like a life path that I'll be happy with, or feel good about. Because working the corporate stuff, it was like, yeah, this is like a really easy way to like do this till I'm 50, but like I was like, I don't really want that life.
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
something that I've figured out, like with the people that I've met who are actually living van life, who are in there full time or just like trying to get started, all of them are trying to escape the corporate world or trying to live differently. And it's very hard for people to actually take that first step because they're losing that basically safety net. And for me, it was like I sold my gym, I sold my screen printing business, and then I was trying to figure out how I was going to make money, which luckily I started making a little bit of money as content creating. But I don't see that to be like what I want to do. What I want to do is like completely different things because I like building businesses, I like staying busy. I just don't want to do it in the corporate sense.
yeah, I mean, that's, I think a lot of people don't get just how corporate it can be and feel to make money through like the ad space.
Oh, definitely.
It is not like all freedom and like talk to any content. Like it's a lot of people can look at it and be like, oh, that's not work. And it's like it's so many emails, it's so much computer time, it's so much like it's a job. Like you can, it's a weird job because you can succeed in doing so many odd things with it. Like you can blow up because you like made soup and like that
Yeah.
video goes viral or something. And then
Yep.
it's like you're not a professional soup maker, but that's what like started your profession. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's just like it can be completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
But then there's a ton of follow-up work for it. So it is a job. Um,
Yeah, you're always
but
trying to meet the next, like, what's the next thing that'll go viral? What's the next thing that'll go viral?
yeah,
And then when you have brands reaching out to you or you're reaching out to brands, essentially you're putting yourself back in the corporate world because you have to deal with contracts, non-competes, you have to deal with their HR department, you have to get paid, you have to do
yeah,
all of that. And it's not, I mean, it is escaping the corporate world. Like you're not sitting at a desk 9 to 5, but you're still doing some of the similar things that you would be doing if you had a desk job.
yep. And I think a lot of people like realize very quickly, like they're like, yeah, they want to work with me, they value me, they like what I do, because that's all what they lead with. It's like, we love what you're doing. It's like
Exactly.
you learn very quickly you love that I have an audience, because you would not be sending this email without that audience being there. So
True.
my like quick hot take on it is you're not selling you, you're selling like 5 seconds to a minute of everyone who follows you's time. Like you are
Hmm.
selling their time. And I think looking at it in that light makes you appreciate it in a different way, and also like take on work differently, because it's like you are like, people trust you with their time, and like that's a very the most valuable thing. So it's like, am I putting something in front of them that's worth their time? And also like when a company reaches out and uh I look at it and I'm like, this is not worth selling all their time, all that time, all those people's times for this. Like, this is not an equitable trade. It's not giving them anything they need. It's not giving me anything like that makes it worth it, because I just look at it as like that's not a good use of their time. And also like
Yeah.
the audience I've built and that connection, that relationship is worth more than like what this person's offering me.
Yeah.
I
No.
will take on things that have a cause, especially with small businesses. I'll try to
Mhm.
like help smaller like sole proprietor businesses out
Mhm.
more than I'm gonna help out like a bigger corporate
Yeah.
person.
Essentially, you don't want to lose your following's trust because I mean, if you're just putting out ads all the time of things that you actually don't use or just whatever's paying the bills, it loses your people's trust very quickly.
Yeah, it loses that relationship, because if I'm not being a good steward of their time and not like putting things in front of them that I think are worth time, why would I think that like they would appreciate that?
Yeah.
And it's a weird, it's a touchy, personal, corporate, it's a weird life. And
Hmm.
that's where it's like I don't want to depend on that, because like, man, if something happens with Ayla, she's got her own insurance and stuff. But if all of a sudden like if I'm faced with a ton of bills, and kind of got there where like this past year again, getting diagnosed again, just with like a much smaller one, but like the medical bills are still
Oh yeah.
not
They
small.
pile
Even
up quick.
if the cancer's small, the medical bills are smaller, but they're still not little. So it kind of became like, yeah, I'll maybe take on something that I wouldn't normally, just because there's that like life pressure. And that's where I can convey to an audience like, hey, I need this. Like, and I can say that, and I'll just say that, and like people are super kind and receptive to it. That doesn't mean I'm gonna like take on any ad for anything. It just
Hmm.
means like, yeah, maybe I open the door to like uh I worked with like a whiskey company, but I was kind of like, I don't know, I'm not like a
Yeah.
huge whiskey guy. Like, I don't really want to base my anything around my audience around like alcohol, or anything like that. But they really focused on like drinking responsibly, and then their whole campaign was drinking with dogs,
Mm.
and working with like a rescue. And so I was like, okay, this is in line, like it is cool. And like they're like throw a dog party and like
Yeah.
make a cocktail at it, and I was like, that sounds
No, I think
good
that's
enough.
great. Yeah, it has.
So
I mean, all of your like social media is you and Ayla and Build, so I'm like that. It fits your personality in that way.
yeah,
So I don't know. I
but
mean, drinking
yeah,
wise though, that's a
saying
whole
no,
nother subject.
yeah, saying no to like, I think creating life where you can say no to stuff is really important. Um, and not like be in a bind, because
Mhm.
that would not be ideal.
Yeah.
Um,
So content creation aside, like, what's your? Everyone always wants to know like how to do what we're doing. Like they want to live in the van life, but they don't know what to do financially. Like you mentioned trust funds. Not everybody's a trust fund. Not everybody can do content creation. Like you're building out vans. What's your like main sources of income as you're out there?
Money you don't spend is money you don't have to make is a
It's
huge
true.
thing. And that was early on. My friends were like, "Oh, I don't know how you did it." And I had like a good group of friends in Chicago, and they're like, "Man, that's so cool! Like, how you ever do that?" And I was like, "Let's, if you want to." I was like, "Let's pull up all our, let's go print out our credit card receipts and only add up Fridays and Saturdays. See the difference we spend." Because like I didn't go out at all Fridays or
Yeah.
Saturdays. Like I didn't go out to bars. I didn't do anything on the weekends. That is like kind of a boring life, and it was kind of a necessity. But then immediately they're like, "No, we're good." Like they got it, because it's like, yeah, you like that becomes, especially in your 20s, a huge like spend.
It
Is
really
just the
is. Yeah.
social aspects and stuff, and it's like people don't notice it, but they'll spend $10,000 a year on
Oh yeah.
weekends,
I mean,
or
for
more.
myself, even for myself, like we would go out to there's this like River Spirit hotel, bar, casino, whatever it is, and we would go out
Yeah,
there, and I would spend $800 to $1,000 in a weekend just because I'm like, all right, we're all partying up, hanging out, and
yeah.
it's pointless. Like I didn't get anything out of that. I have a few memories of it, but for real, that wasn't a good choice of money at all.
Yeah, and like my friends did enjoy that time in their 20s. There's a certain part of me that's like, wow, that would have been really cool to live it up with like and live with four of your best friends in a city and not be too worried about everything. Because that was one thing with me. I did have an unhealthy relationship with money. Not that I overvalued it, but I needed it and didn't
Hmm.
have it, and it stressed me out a ton. So a lot of that wasn't me being like super wise or like a financial guru. It was just me being like super stressed and being like, how in the world am I gonna afford to be sick and afford to have a life and afford to do anything that I want to do, and also just like not become so sad and bitter that I end up just giving up. Um,
Yeah,
so that was, it makes it sound really smart to be like, yeah, let's compare our Friday
yeah,
and Saturday nights, but it was like I didn't, I was so scared to spend money. Um, and I think that was the reason, uh the financial fear of being worse off than I was a reason to get into the van. So I don't hope that for anybody. For me, it was like a great solution, but it's like sell your gym and your
yeah.
screen for a bit. That sounds like a way better path to me to
Yeah,
get into van
it
life.
was a good start to get into it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But continuing van life, you have to have the plan for what you do while you're in the van, you know?
Yeah. And I think too, like that is spending, like having that attitude while you're in a van. Like I always joke, like, yeah, your first year, you're going to drive 30,000 miles.
Hmm.
Because you're just like, I'm going to go to Zion and then Yosemite and then Glacier. And then I'm going to go to Banff. And then I'm going to visit my family in Michigan. And then I'm going to go take a job that pays $800 in Arizona. Uh,
You're
and
like
you realize,
announcing
like,
my entire future plans right now.
it gets to be so much. And you're like, oh, that was $9,000 in gas,
Yep.
uh, not including like bills from the mechanical side of things. So it adds up quickly. And so I think having a plan, even when you get into van life, of like, I'm gonna, because it's also easy to like eat out a lot, things like that. So having a good financial plan, because like to be like, okay, I want to be in it in the long run, and or even if it's just a year, I don't want it to be the year of me being on the road super stressed because I'm looking at my bank account every night, realizing like, holy crap, I have no plan.
Hmm.
And I spent all of my money now. Like,
Yeah, no joke.
uh, so yeah, making money though, getting creative with it. I think the biggest things like having an audience has helped with is sell my vans quickly. I created like a little jewelry line when the pandemic hit and my a lot of my photography work went away. Just started making like some epoxy jewelry from, places where I would always like pick up things in nature, and included like the latitude and longitude of where they were picked up, and that was the branding of it. And people really liked it. They liked having a piece of nature with them. And I was like, I kind of knew that. I was like, people will like this thing. And it's a low cost and a high profit margin for it. So doing the same thing with journals, learning how to create something that's useful pragmatic for you while you're on the road. It gives you an outlet in case like, oh yeah, like something broke down. I have like $1,000 unexpected bill, a way that you can like have that money set aside, or also have a means to all of a sudden kind of like boost your uh income a little bit, and getting creative with those things, because I think people do appreciate that, especially when you're creating something they can use, and that they like. They'll look at it as like not a way to support you, but a way that's like, oh yeah, I like spending my money this way. I do the same thing when I see someone that I like who's living a good life and creating something that I think is cool, like I'll buy it.
Mhm.
um and that's a big part of building communities, kind of like supporting each other, and that's what I found early on is like, I think early on too, people were much more supportive for each other than they are now. Because now it's kind of like, how can I get to the top? How can I need to get the attention, I need to get up there.
Mhm.
And so community wise, it feels much more like, uh people have, it's a much more competitive world now, so people have to focus on themselves, where back in the beginning it was a little bit easier to get a sense of community, where we're all in this together and we want to
Mhm.
all see each other succeed, because supply and demand wise, like there wasn't a lot of us and there
Yeah.
wasn't a ton of demand, and so it was just a different world, back then. So to a certain extent, I'm probably not the best person to ask that question to, because it should probably be someone who knows just this, like just what's going on now.
Yeah.
Because I look at it now and it's like, wow, it's almost harder now,
To
than
get
it was.
into van life?
Yeah,
Is it because everybody's like trying to do the super bougie $100,000, $200,000 vans or what?
yeah. Expectation, I think, is like, um, it's hard. Like back then, it's like no one could tell me I was wrong because no one was right.
Hmm.
Um, where now a good way to get into like getting attention is to like five mistakes everyone's making, or
Yes.
like
Yeah.
how to not have like, there's a point and a purpose to everything, and there's a reason why builds are built the way they are, and have the comforts that they have. There's also a lot of times where it's like that is a want and not a need. You don't need an electric system that honestly is over like $1,000. Like you can get an electric system that doesn't have an inverter, that doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, that's not powering a lot of stuff, and it can be really affordable. And that's what you saw a lot back then. So the barrier to entry back then was so low and so small, where now people are like, well, I need 400 amp hours of lithium. Okay,
Hmm.
you're immediately looking at like, you know, $2,000 to $5,000 for
Yeah.
that.
Just for the batteries.
And
Yeah.
you need all of these like this all of these fuses and everything, and all like, which safety wise, pro build wise, like yes. um Pragmatically, you can get away with a lot less if you build a simpler system. You don't need a shower, you don't like inside, you don't, and you're probably not going to use one even if you have one. I know you
Yeah.
have one.
No, I've used it one time and I've had the van like shower ready for
Yeah,
6 months now. So I've used it
yeah.
once. There's no reason you should have it. It was just for looks. And I thought since I shower every day at home, I'm probably going to shower every day there.
So
Definitely does. It doesn't happen.
yeah, really expensive closets is what I call them.
Yeah, it's going to end up becoming a locker room. Essentially, like there's going to
Yeah.
be a bench under there, some like hanger space, and then some shelves at the top. So once I'm like fully into it and putting a lot more time on the road, I'm going to be transforming it over.
So that's where I think a lot of people now are almost forced into mistakes, forced into thinking they need this thing, thinking they need to spend this amount of money, thinking it needs to be that. Like that fire truck I just built out, she had put the subfloor in and the ceiling up, or had someone do that. But her composting toilet was like $100 like template plan thing she bought, and I built the box, and like it's got a different plan than like the $1,000 composting
Hmm.
toilets. A little bit less convenience, but it's like perfect. It'll work the same.
Yeah, same thing.
Um, and then like she used just like a regular Coleman stove, not Coleman stove, but like one of those like regular camping stoves with an adapter that'll go to a propane tank. So not
Hmm.
using the green tanks saves a lot of money. Not building one in saves time with cabinetry and stuff. She already had her fridge. She's going and like doing a simpler wiring, and electric plan on her own. But that whole build, granted, like I think one of the things that's working with me is like I will take on hourly clients, and it's like I should probably just take on commission stuff, because there's the joke with contractors, like if you see them working in like on an hourly project, they're going to be
Mhm.
going super slow. If
Should
you
take them
see them
forever.
work on like a commission project, they're going to be ripping through it.
Mhm.
But I work hourly as if I was getting paid like a contractor commission to do something. So that whole build, labor wise, cost her like 8,000 to get like a full uh cabinetry and everything that she wanted there.
Mhm.
Granted, like I didn't do the full extent of what I'm capable of. But we kept out drawer slides to keep the expense down and the labor down. We kept out like some different things so I could focus more on like the design aspect and doing some of the cooler stuff in there. But finding a good builder, or just like finding a way to do it on your own, and keeping those like priorities uh based on what you want, based on versus like what everyone says you should have. Because a lot of people probably would have, like a lot of other builders were like would probably say like, yeah, I'm not going to take that job unless it's like 20,000.
Just on their end, 20,000
Yeah,
for them. Mhm.
yeah, because like a lot of people's overhead is so high that you can't open your doors and make a profit. And I think that's what people don't get with approaching builders. A lot of times it's like they almost like, sometimes there's people that's like, well, I thought this was supposed to be affordable, and it's like, well, running a business is usually a for-profit endeavor.
Yeah.
And also like there's so much more overhead than you think. And like uh a lot of times too, I build fast. Like I think that's a lot of times like people will be surprised and they'll see what I charge, and like 8,000 is still not a small amount.
Yeah.
um but part of that skill set is, and I think building in an unconventional way is like I don't draw out plans most of the time. I just do it all in my head.
That's how I am as well.
And see it and build it and kind of work reverse, like okay, like start on the thing that needs to fit there and then build everything around it. And so it goes really quickly. And I think like one of my mentors was like, you need to make it look harder than you make it look. And I was like, I get that, but it's frustrating to me because like you look at other professions and things they do, like no one is like looking at Usain Bolt and being like, yeah man, that only took you like 9 seconds. Like took this guy next to you like 9.5 and took that guy like 10 seconds. Like you did it faster than them. So like we're gonna put you on like a hourly and you worked less time. Like no,
Yep,
it's like it's good if you can be faster. It's good if you can deliver the same thing quicker.
it is.
Um no one, it's always seen as like a better thing. Like in the NFL, Tyreek Hill's like the fastest guy. He gets paid to be quick.
Yeah.
Like contractors, getting them in today. And that's where there's that, that triangle of like good, fast, cheap.
Mhm.
Being able to deliver on all three of those, and like not really uh I wouldn't say I'm cheap though. That is like the thing that probably differentiates me, but I would say good, fast, and reasonable is something that you can like deliver on.
Mhm.
But you have to like set good boundaries and good expectations and
Oh
then
yeah.
deliver on them and be a good person to work with. But I also have that expectations with my clients. Like if I'm going to be a good to work with, you're going to be good to work for.
Definitely.
Because if not, like I don't I don't need to be doing that of someone who's like just constantly like trying to lowball me or anything like that.
Mhm.
So that's really nice I love the clients that I've had who really value what I do and the effort and time and heart I put into it, and always trying to go the extra mile for them.
Yeah. Do you have a like schedule that you work for a certain amount of time and then you take time for yourself, or how do you manage that since you're trying to get out of your shop and more into the traveling, like working for other people or working with other people?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do going forward. I always say that I'm like gonna make more time for things, and I think Ayla's my reminder to like take her to the beach, and those end up being my time, is like her time doing things for her. I think it's super healthy to have that responsibility towards something else. Especially like I'm trying to like reassess my relationship again with money and like the stress around it, because This year it was just like, yeah, I am so scared of being where I was before that I'm gonna work really, really hard. So my schedule was 7 days a week. I'd wake up usually with the sun, and work till like 10, 11, 12, 1 in the morning.
Oh wow.
Um, Thankfully made it so I didn't need to really exercise or go to the gym. It's just working physically all day does that. Um, I do genuinely enjoy it, which is good. I think, it still feels like work. You still realize the sacrifice of it. You're just willing to, I'm not probably going to be putting in 16, 17-hour days on a job that I don't enjoy. So I think doing something you love uh makes it possible to work harder and longer at it than you would if you didn't really enjoy it. But it's still work. Like, it's still not going to the
Yeah.
beach. It's still not sitting down and reading a book. It's still not hanging out with your friends. Um, so I knew that too, and I also knew I was working towards the goal of being okay, um, and creating. When I saw all these bills coming in again this year, I was like, man, again, here's another setback. Here's another,
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, this time I'm gonna work hard enough to pay all those off, but I'm also gonna work more and save hard so I can be comfortable at the end. I was like, I don't want to just get by again. I spent so much time just getting by. And again, I'm just like, you got to be a little humble. I'm thankful that it wasn't worse like it was last time, and even last time it wasn't worse than it could have been.
Mhm.
Um, so I have that now. So I think I'm really proud of that, and I'm also really thankful that it just wasn't worse. And so I'm able to do things like I do want to focus on writing. I don't want to just pump out builds all the time.
Yeah.
I've kind of shown, especially like I'm a little tired, uh, physically, like I can do it over and over and over again. But it's like, man, someday I'm gonna make a mistake and take a finger off if I'm working in this space.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or like my shoulder was like, I was like, yeah, this my shoulder needs some time off. Um, like I might not, but like that does. And yeah, like keeping your goals and focus is something I'm trying to do. Um, and be calm and be smart about it. And I think like if I learned it, I learned a lot at Gutted. I learned a lot of humility there, and like, um, but also I think I learned like there's more to everything than just hard work. Because that was my goal there, is just like, I know I looked at the other teams like
Mhm.
Stolp, Chuck, me, kind of, and even Finn and Brady on my team, the other two pros on my team. I was like, Finn and Brady are both like light years smarter than I am. Um, both engineers. Uh, Chuck's perfect, right? Like, what has Chuck done wrong? Stolp is just an animal.
Yeah.
Uh, I was like, I mean, and I know that it's kind of a chip on my shoulder where it's like, okay, I've always been able to work my way into the room of the most talented people. And it's really cool. I learned so much. Like, I'm always the dumbest person in the room, I feel like. Um, which is a good place to be. Uh,
I mean, you got
but
to
I was
learn from
like,
somebody, right?
well, yeah, and it's also just good to have that mindset and be around those people.
It is.
Like, uh, you know, but I knew going into gut it, I was like, yep, I'm the least talented of like this upper echelon of pros and
Do you
like
feel
good
like
people.
you proven yourself throughout your work throughout Gutted?
I don't know. Like, that's up to other people. Like, all I
Yeah.
know is I can do my best, and my best always involves like working really hard. I think
Mhm.
I grew up like um playing sports and stuff, and ended up like went through some adversity there. Was kind of like one of the bigger kids growing up, so I was used to just being able to like
Yeah.
be stronger, faster, bigger than everybody. And then in middle school, I had a hip surgery that stunted my growth and like made it so I was possibly not going to be able to run again.
Mm.
Um, I couldn't walk for 4 months. I couldn't do anything more than walk for a year after that. And then I got back in. I like took a break from 7th grade basically to like sophomore year of sports, and there's a huge gap there in competition.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'm behind. Like everyone hits harder and goes faster. And so the one thing I was like, yeah, I missed out on that. I don't have the size on aspect anymore. So that was really, I think, when my work ethic started to supplement like God-given abilities and natural aspects to things. So um and that's where it's like if I'm gonna be good, it's gonna come through like hard work and dedication. And that was really like hopefully, I don't know, was what I was able to bring to the table is like working hard. But like I said, there's more to it than that. I don't really feel like I have too much to prove to anybody. If I'm trying to prove things to other people, um that comes from a place of insecurity probably.
Mhm.
And with Vans, like it's kind of inconsequential to me. Like if someone likes what I do, that's great. If they don't, like,
Mhm.
okay, I don't get why
Yeah, I feel
someone.
like anybody who's building vans, I mean, you're going to find different styles. Like you have a very like wood cabin kind of like homey feel, and then I have the super cold, clean,
Yeah,
modern vibe. So it's just
you're like a
who
sick
likes
like
what.
hotel room, like that you
Yeah,
go in and be
mine,
like, wow, this is nice.
mine's very interesting.
Yeah. So, and that's where you'll, especially now, there's like the best way to get traction on social media is to tell someone else they're doing something wrong.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I get that all the damn time.
so it's just like, but what's wrong about it? Like
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
preference thing, or like I don't know. It's dramatic in that sense, but I would rather see what people can do. And that's where I loved about Gutted was it was an opportunity to show what you can do.
Hmm.
That's why I like those bump outs on the side. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
built wooden bump outs once before, but I'd never done the big one that crossed 2 panels. And I was like, that's
Hmm.
cool. I can like try to do that. This is kind of like a Gutted for me was like a why don't you swing for the fences? Like
Yeah.
when
I
it's
mean, it's
someone
not
else.
your van. You don't have to worry about selling it. So
Not your rig, you're not selling it, you're not paying for the materials, like what materials ended up
yeah, no
being
joke.
able to be gotten, but like that was kind of cool is like I liked going there and being like seeing what people are capable of and can do. And I think that was like a really cool thing. So hopefully what I showed was not like trying to prove myself, but I was able to show like here's what
Hmm.
you can do. And that's like my one hard thing about Gutted is like I don't really feel like that happened too much.
Hmm.
Um
Well, I
wasn't
mean, there
able.
was a lot that happened over the 5 day
Yeah,
course or 6 day course. So, I mean, it was a lot of stress, a lot of tension, a lot of drama. So, you really didn't just get in there and were able to do your best work. You were able to do what you can do in a short amount of time, being rushed and
yeah,
stressed, really.
yeah. With like, I think our team did uh what we could do with like the situation, and
Yeah.
that's what every team is doing in Gutted.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you walk into a perfect
Mm.
lab where everything is set up perfectly and primed to like
No.
build and show. And that's where it's like it is a show. It's got interpersonal stuff as much as it's got like the build aspect.
Hmm.
I was naive to that probably. Like I was my head was like I was like not like I'm on a show. I was like I'm
Yeah.
building. And then it
Did
was
you
like,
watch season one?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, season one and season two are going to be completely different.
Yeah.
Just,
I
just with
mean, I
everything
think
that's
they
happened.
like it's like knowing like season there was more to season one than even like made the cut. So it is a show. It's like not
Hmm.
it's also like there's certain aspects I think is like being on the show where you're like, man, this stinks, this is weird, like this sucks, this is not how I planned it.
Hmm.
But from like a writer and a storyteller side, like when you see some of these things happen, whereas like on a team, you'd be like, darn it, this is not good. As like a producer, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
is a good storyline. And so they're looking at
You're
it
so
from
right.
that aspect, and they're telling a story about something that's happening, and you're just trying to do the
Mhm.
something. So um yeah, it was just like it's still a whirlwind. I kind of reflect on it a little bit
Mhm.
every once in a while, and I'm like, I cringe a little bit, I laugh a little bit, I like worry a lot.
Yeah. Just waiting to see the premiere. Are you going to be going to the premiere?
Potentially I might go they just sent me an email this morning about like hiring me on as a photographer for that, so that'd be kind of
Oh
cool.
wow, very cool.
Um so yeah, speaking of traveling a ton, going from Oregon to Michigan down to Arizona in
Mhm.
4 weeks sounds like a great time.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I
uh
do plan on being out there, so I'll be
oh
hopefully
cool.
at the premiere, so we'll be able to hang out again.
Yeah, no, hopefully. I don't know. I was hanging out with Sarah last night actually.
Mhm.
She picked up some boxes for me to help move me out of the shop. And we went out to eat, and she's like, I think everybody's nervous a little bit
Oh yeah. I'm
to see it,
excited. I wasn't in it, so
especially
I'm good.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you almost were. Dang,
I might be. I know. I can't say anything about it, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, we can't really talk about
No. But
much.
yeah, no, it would have been cool to be on this season, but I do look forward to possibly being on it next season. So
Well,
I'm
that's
definitely
where
talking
it's
about that.
like I think people will maybe see is like whether like you might not ever make it on camera this season. You probably will a little bit, but like you played a part in this year.
Mhm. Possibly.
Well, you did, whether or not it makes the show.
Okay.
And so that's where there's so many people and stories and things going on that like aren't gonna make that part of the show, but we're still
Mhm.
part of the show to the people that were there.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like a life thing. There's so much more going on than meets the eye. And I think in that aspect, taking it with a grain of salt when we all see it and stuff is like this
Mhm.
is a show and they're really good. Like Sam's an amazing storyteller. Wes is like a great visionary type of guy.
Mhm.
So it's cool to see them bringing into fruition like what they imagined and also just like letting it develop. Um, but also like you can't fit everything that happened into 5 hours, six
Yeah.
hours, whatever,
I
you
think they're
know.
going to be doing multiple episodes this time per day. So I think they were saying something around the like 7 to 8 episodes instead of just
So
5 this time.
oh boy.
So we may see more than we thought.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just hope everyone like feels good about it at the end of the
Yeah.
day. That was one thing like I had to reckon with was like, they make this uh my part in it, like really I did want to build well and I wanted it to be a good experience
Mhm.
all around. And uh gosh, what a whirlwind though. Like how do you a lot could be thought about
I need to
in
have you back
retrospect.
on the podcast after the like show has been like out. That way you can actually talk about what's going on.
I mean, I the way I look at it is like, yeah, there's a lot to talk about and a
Mhm.
lot to learn from, and a lot to like. For me, it was like looking at is like definitely like I do work alone all the time. I realize like working in that environment with that many people is much different than like just doing your own thing.
It
Uh,
really is.
been a while since I've been on a team or like been in that role where you're um being a teammate and a leader and a follower and like working in all those aspects. So I'm trying to take away from like a lot of personal growth, and that's where it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I'll talk about it afterwards and stuff when we can open up a little bit more and say some
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But trying to like look internally more than like look at the show things that
Yeah.
happen is my goal with all that right now.
Yeah, you know what I think would be really cool? You know how a lot of like reality TV shows, they'll have like the after party where all of the cast members kind of come together and chat about what was going on. I think that would be a really good idea, but virtually, because obviously everyone's in different areas. But what
Yeah.
if they did like the Brady Bunch little thing where everybody's just kind of like in the square and we're just chatting about like what happened and explaining kind of where their thought process was after watching the video.
Yeah, like I don't that would take logistically a lot, but yeah, we met up
Yeah.
before quite a bit. But yeah, man, like I said, what a whirlwind. I just like sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I could see that through Kyle's eyes, or like what the heck was
Oh
happening?
gosh. Yeah,
Like what
my
you
my my whole thought process was going wild the entire week for sure.
yeah, everyone had thoughts and a lot of them, and I heard a lot of them. And I think that was hard for me is to like hear what everyone's thinking and what they would do and then act from there. It's like, man, I just want to do what I want to do and like taking all those things. I think that was like the most stressful part was like just getting taught to do a lot and trying to like balance
Mhm.
like, okay, what do I do versus what do I not do, and what do I try to make a decision on, or what do I
Yeah.
just like, let go, and like how do you do all those things, and then also understanding like okay, I'm getting asked these many questions because this thing is happening, but I'm also still trying to keep a build on track.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that was interesting. So I know too that like for every thought I was hearing, people are having thoughts about me and saying things about me.
Yeah.
So uh
Yeah,
That's
well, I'm interested to see all that as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and cut it for the day. We need to come back for a part 2. So I would say let's schedule something after Gutted has been released and we can talk more about it. We may even get
okay.
a couple more people in here if that's cool with you.
Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
cool.
Sounds good, Kyle.
Yeah, man. Well, it
Yep.
was really good talking to you. I can't wait to see you, gosh, in about a month.
Yeah. Good catching up. And yeah,
It
hopefully we make it
was.
there.
Definitely. Yeah, man. Well, it was really good to see you, and I'll see you next time.
All right. See you, Kyle.